Welcome to GitHub Copilot Extensibility. My name is Alexis Abril, and I'm an engineer on the GitHub Technical Partnerships team. Today, we'll talk about Copilot Extensibility, how you can join us, and experience real-world scenarios from partners currently developing in this program. GitHub Copilot is a powerful tool for any developer. Earlier this year, we announced the capability for integrators to extend GitHub Copilot Chat, allowing for the ability to engage with Copilot in ways specific to your development needs. At a high level, Copilot chat extensions operate by an integrator registering their extension as a GitHub app. This tells GitHub where to send interesting events, such as a user sending a question via Copilot chat. This also tells the user what permissions and access your application requires. Copilot Chat then is able to recognize when a user is intending to interact with an extension and routes the request to the extension's infrastructure. The extension can choose how to respond, either via existing AI solutions, a proprietary LLM, or even Copilot itself. In addition, as this is a GitHub app, the extension can make requests against the GitHub API. We announced the potential for these extensions at GitHub Universe in 2023 and showcased our first partner integrations at Microsoft Build 2024. Where we are today is in limited public beta. As we grow this program, we are inviting select partners to develop extensions specific to their business scenarios to further enhance the developer experience where developers live. The Copilot Partner Program is how you can take part in this journey with us. By joining the program, you will have access to developing and testing Copilot extensions. Also, you have the opportunity to influence the direction of Copilot as we value and encourage feedback from our partners in the GitHub ecosystem. At this year's Microsoft Build conference, we were able to showcase many of our partners currently in the program. Sentry developed an extension to provide user context or trigger workflows directly interacting with your Sentry data. Lambda Test allows for a developer to write code and seamlessly invoke tests on their infrastructure without ever leaving your IDE. LaunchDarkly's extension provides instant access to their comprehensive documentation, enabling developers to integrate their SDK or manage their environments. All of these scenarios are executed in a conversational manner and without leaving the developer's focus, either in the IDE or github.com. Today, we'll explore capabilities from Atlassian, Elastic, and Split. Following each presentation, we'll have an open session for live questions from the audience. If you're interested in joining the Copilot Partner Program, please visit the link in our description or in the chat. Our first presentation is from the team at Atlassian.
Thanks so much for joining today. I'm super excited about this partnership between Atlassian and GitHub Copilot. We're going to give a quick overview of our new Atlassian extension and then jump into a full demo. My name is John Kinmonth, and I'm focused on developer experience solutions at Atlassian. Mainly, how can we keep developers in the flow and help teams collaborate better as they build the next wave of applications? Also, from the Atlassian team, we have Jade, our product designer for Dev Solutions, who will be doing the demo, as well as Sasank, who is one of our engineering managers working on AI for developers at Atlassian. First, I don't know about you, but when I'm deep in focus time and then have to switch tabs or log into another tool, not only does it take me at least 15 minutes to mentally get back to where I was, but all of a sudden I'm making myself another coffee or working on something else. Context switching is a killer of not only deep creativity, but also just finishing the minor thing you were working on. In our recent 2024 State of Teams report, we actually found that teams using AI within the Atlassian platform spent 50% less time looking for information, which means a lot less context switching. And now, with the new Atlassian AI extension on GitHub Copilot that we're going to demo today, you can get all of that context from Jira or Confluence without even having to leave your editor. At Atlassian, we're all about how we empower teams to use all of their favorite tools, and this new extension brings all of the knowledge and context right to where you're writing code. From knowledge about goals, teams, and projects to all the details stored within issues, everything's accessible by simply chatting with Atlassian in Copilot. And the same goes for any documentation or requirements that your team stores in Confluence. Basically, if you have a question, just ask. No more switching tabs or tools. And all of it is powered by Atlassian Rovo. We actually think of Rovo as a large knowledge model for your company's work helping you move and act faster by providing you with unified search and connectors to your favorite third-party tools, like GitHub. So to learn more about Rovo, make sure to check out Atlassian.com/Rovo after this webinar and sign up for the waitlist. With that, let's jump into the demo to see the new Atlassian extension in action. Our product designer, Jade, wasn't able to make it to the live event today since it's 3 a.m. in Sydney, but she recorded the demo, and we have myself and Sasank from the Atlassian team to answer questions afterwards. All right, passing it over to Jade.
Hey, I'm Jade, and I'm super excited to take you through a demo of our Atlassian for GitHub Copilot agent. So firstly, let's set some context. Here is my team's Jira board. We're working on a couple things, but we're mostly working on the Jenkins for Jira app. In particular, this is actually the next issue that I want to pick up. And it says here that I need to essentially clean up some of the styling and some of the UI for the connection panel header. So this looks like a pretty simple UI change. I basically need to update a few values to match the designs. So I'm just going to jump straight into code. Here I have my Jenkins for Jira app open. I basically know where I want to make the change, which is on the connection wizard, and I want to update the styling. But in particular, I actually forget the exact requirements that I need to do. So what I can do is switch over to the GitHub Copilot chat. I can simply type in @Atlassian, and it can start helping me with my work. So for example, I just want to double check the exact requirements that I need. So I can ask, can you help me? Or maybe, can you remind me for what I need to do for issue char 12? And what it's doing now is trolling through Jira, through my work, to give me the correct response. Awesome. So it says for my issue, I need to fix up the panel styling, and in particular, it's given me the Figma link if I want to double check that, but I can see that I need to update the header to 16 pixels to match the designs. This all looks great, except I can see that in my code that I actually need a spacing token, not a pixel count. And so what I want to do is now translate what I see in the description to what I can implement in the code. So interacting with the agent is all through natural language, quite similar to GitHub Copilot chat. However, we can provide even more context as you're working. So as an example, if I were to ask GitHub Copilot normally, what are the spacing tokens that I can use? It gives me a response, but to be honest, this response is super generic. It doesn't actually take into account my company or my team's specific conventions, design system, internal documentation, or any of my ecosystem. However, if I were to give Atlassian the exact same prompt, so I'm just going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to type @Atlassian to specifically ask Atlassian, I can get a better response. And so what it's doing now is, again, looking through Jira and also Confluence through all of our internal documentation and practices and standards to try and get a more specific answer. Awesome. So you can see here that it's given me back this exact spacing tokens that we use internally. I can tell from my issue, I actually needed 16 pixels. And so what I can do is now take a look. Where is 16? Here. Okay, it's the space 200 token. So this saves me from actually switching between code, my documentation, having to find things. And so I can just go straight into space 200, and I know that on the header, I actually need to update this. What's even better is you can get even more specific. So I can ask directly what I need. For example, what does 16 pixels map to using the spacing tokens? And let's see what it gives me back. Amazing. So it can give me direct answers to context that I need. So now I have a better idea of how to implement and make the changes, so I can go ahead and do that. But we just went through one example. This also applies to anything. I could ask questions about how to implement something based on best practices, on internal documentation, and I can also use this to help me understand other people's services and understand the code. But we also know that dev work gets way more complicated. There are so many things you need to think about. For instance, we know that everyone has super different requirements on how to roll out a feature. This all depends on internal practices. And so if I were to ask GitHub Copilot normally, and I can do this by removing the Atlassian mention, how do I roll out a feature? So it's giving me a response, but again, this is very generic. This is based on, searching through the web, but this is not my process that I need. But instead, if I were to ask Atlassian, and I do this again by mentioning Atlassian, how do I roll out a feature? I get very, very specific guidance, and I also get some links to some more documentation. So, for example, we know that we use internally a tool called LaunchDarkly or Switcheroo. Switcheroo is actually an internal tool that we use specifically for Atlassian, and so there's no way that I could ask Copilot and it has context over all of these internal practices. I can even get even more specific. So for example, I know I want to use Switcheroo, which is our internal tool. So I could ask, how do I make a feature flag using Switcheroo? I'm also spelling badly. And again, it's scanning through all of our internal practice, our documentation, and it's looking through Confluence and Jira to get us a better response. Amazing. So it's given me some exact steps that I need to follow now. And even better, this is definitely all the information I need because it's based on internal practices. So here are just a few examples of how you could use the Atlassian GitHub Copilot agent, but there's even more. So now I just want to save my changes and I'm ready to move on to my next piece of work. So I could even ask, what else do I have to do today for Project Charlie, which is my Teams board. And again, I can ask everything using natural language, it then interprets it and gives me the correct response back. Amazing, so I can see that I got to do char 12 and char 11, so maybe actually this is the next ticket that I want to pick up. So now let's chat about the setup. Setting up our Atlassian agent should be quite simple. Once we have the marketplace listing available, you should be able to look up Atlassian for GitHub Copilot on the GitHub Marketplace. It will then take you to install the app and forward you to our authorization and the setup page. So here's the setup page, and it's asking you to connect a Atlassian site to your GitHub Copilot chat. So here I can see I can choose any site that I'd like to work on, and I can always switch to another one later. In this drop down here, I see the sites I have available to me, and these are sites that have Rovo enabled. And I know that I want to connect Hello in particular, so I'm just going to look that up and click OK to connect it. So it looks like I'm all ready to go. So I can now close my tab and go straight into my code editor to start using it. I'm going to switch to my code here. I'm going to move my face out of the way. And if I look up at Atlassian, I can then start asking it questions. Amazing. So now I'm all connected and ready to go.
Thanks, Jade, for that awesome demo. As you saw, the Atlassian for GitHub Copilot extension brings all that additional context from Jira and Confluence right to GitHub Copilot, providing you with more accurate and descriptive responses to your questions. We cannot wait for you to try this extension out so we can hear your feedback. It'll be available for download in the GitHub Marketplace coming soon. In the meantime, since the extension requires access to Rovo from Atlassian, we recommend checking out atlassian.com/Rovo to learn more. And if you're not using Atlassian at all today, be sure to check out any of our dev tools, including Loom for asynchronous collaboration, where you can send videos back and forth, our new internal developer platform, Compass, to track all of your services and systems, or any of the new dev-friendly improvements and templates in Jira for planning and tracking work. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, John. Thank you, Sass, for the excellent presentation. Thank you, Jade, as well, for walking us through what this Copilot agent is capable of. We have some questions coming in, but anything additional you folks want to add to the presentation?
No, we're just happy to.
Oh, John, looks like we got you on mute at the moment.
Am I still on mute?
Oh, we'll sort that out. It looks like we got a little technical difficulties there. So one question that was very common going through this presentation, obviously this is interacting with the Atlassian suite of products. Jira comes to mind immediately. With this agent integration, I'm a developer, I'm in my IDE, I'm going through my Jira issues as Jade was demoing. Can I update an issue from the Copilot chat?
So right now, the app can only pull context from Confluence and Jira into Copilot. However, we are expanding Rovo's capabilities, so soon we'll be able to support actions such as creating issues or updating issues, assigning issues, and more, to be honest.
Awesome. Apologies, I had a little technical issue there, glitch with my audio as well. A common question here, too, with the greater Atlassian suite. Does this work with other Atlassian products as well, such as Compass comes to mind?
Yeah, for those that don't know, Compass is a free developer experience platform. The Copilot agent doesn't work with Compass currently, but there are some great integrations between Compass and GitHub already. So there's things that customers can look at to benefit from that great integration. But yeah, watch this space.
Fantastic. John, please.
Oh, can you hear me now? Oh, awesome. Great. Yeah. Doubling down on the Compass integration. GitHub users today can easily connect to the Atlassian IDP and get metrics, scorecards, recent deployment events, activity history, all that stuff out of the box, and automatically populate their software component catalog. So there's a pretty rich integration there in terms of teams that are looking to stand up an IDP at their org. So,
fantastic. That's good to hear. Here's a question that's coming in. Will this? We went through how it interacts with Confluence as well, which is a great. I mean, that's a very popular. Hey, I have my knowledge base. It's in Confluence. I want answers specific to my business. Will this also be able to generate code specific to our knowledge base? Let's say I have a style guide defined in Confluence. Can I generate code that's specific to that style guide?
So you can bring the style guide context into Copilot and ask Copilot to help you generate the code. Rovo at this stage is not directly going to generate code for you. But that's the power of this integration, is to go, yes, I can bring that Atlassian context into Copilot and get Copilot to generate code with that Atlassian context.
Fantastic. I love when products just play nice with each other, and this is something the developers essentially get to benefit from for free. Obviously, if we're talking about Jira, we're talking about agile development, we're talking about sprints. Am I able to see, let's say, how many issues are currently blocked in a current sprint, or other statistics from a current sprint?
Yeah, you can get just natural language questions to Rovo, and you can ask it anything about the issues, how many issues are blocked, which ones are assigned to me, which issues are stuck on the board that have been stuck for a while that I can jump in and help with. Anything that comes to mind from a natural language perspective, and that's the power of sort of LLMs and this new generation of AI.
Fantastic. Pulling on that thread with Rovo a little bit more, are you able to generate reports based on, let's say we went through, okay, I have the blocked issues in a current sprint. Can I get any kind of reporting, such as a burn down chart for the current sprint through this integration?
Yeah, you can ask questions and it will give you sort of a response immediately. to generate kind of periodic reports that you'll get periodically, not right yet at this point in time. But in terms of a natural chat interface to get, what's the current burn down metrics, what's the current metrics of the sprint, etc. Absolutely, yes.
Fantastic, fantastic. Going back to the style guide question, general information about a specific style guide, but maybe I interface with a couple different teams at a large enterprise, and those two teams have different style guides, but I have access to both in Confluence. How does that resolution play out?
Exactly as though you would talk to a human being, to be honest. You would just ask it for my teams and specify the team's name, style guide. And the magic happens in the background. Rovo goes through Confluence, finds the team's name, finds the links, and gives you the data that's relevant to that particular team.
Yeah. And to that point, you could even ask, like, what's the diff between our style guide and another team's style guide, and is there something we should be updating towards, or they should be updating? So I think there's not only are you cutting down on interruptions with teams, but it also can empower more collaboration across teams. Like, you could be using it almost as a learning and collaborative tool there to find out what's going on within your org.
Excellent, fantastic. A general question: as you folks have developed Rovo over the previous months, potentially the previous year, and you've developed this integration, what do you personally find, or what does your team find exciting about development going forward? Like, where is this leading for you folks?
I'll let you go first, Seth.
Sure. For me, it's the actions, the stuff that's coming in terms of being able to execute actions as well, and tying that together with being able to query Confluence in Jira. And then the expansion further in terms of other Atlassian product suites that we would query data from, which, it's just, there's a lot of data sitting in the Atlassian world that being able to bring all of that context in a very easy manner into my IDE as I'm writing code is an amazing idea. So I'm looking forward to being able to live more in my IDE.
Yeah, I love that. I think on my side, +1 to all of the data. Like, think about it this way. You've been working in Jira, your team, your company. You've been working in Jira and Confluence for years, and you've been storing up all of this data and the ways your teams interact, the ways you work, and it's hard to surface all of that historical data in a way that helps you get your job done, and this really unlocks that. It's kind of like the payoff for all that, the issue tracking you've done for years and years. So I'm really excited to see how that impacts devs' workflows. And then likewise, I'm really excited about just anything that cuts down on interruptions or mundane tasks, and that are not associated with writing code or learning or collaborating. If it's something that is a mundane task that slows down your workflow, I'm excited to see Atlassian tackle that through our AI investments over the next year.
I love it. What you're describing, being able to manage, through an action with your current, suite. Immediately, I'm envisioning like, oh, I could stay in my IDE. Maybe I'm asking questions against my current style guide, but I realize like, oh, I need to update some documentation here. Maybe I can update a Confluence article from my IDE. Hey, just fix that one sentence. That's really all I need to do, and have that keeping me in the flow state without ever having to leave where a developer is. So I love that piece. It looks like we have one last question coming in. Probably the most important question is, I'm interested. Where do I join? Where do I sign up?
Yeah, no, super excited you're interested. The way to get on our initial wait list is through a link that we can drop in the chat here. It's atlassian.com/software/rovo. I will try and drop that in the chat. And when that's available in the next couple weeks, you're able to go right to your GitHub Marketplace and download the app, and away you would go.
Awesome. If you're watching this as an attendee, be sure to check the description. We'll have these links shared for you so you can join us in our various, these are all essentially beta programs, but we love to hear feedback from engineers and other folks interested in the program. And be sure to let us know what you think. I want to say thank you again to the folks at Atlassian. Thank you, John. Thank you, Sass. Thank you, Jade. I know there's a little bit of a time difference today, but we're very excited on these integrations and really excited to see what we can build together next. Thank you, folks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, I'm Jeff Estel. Thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about bringing observability insights from Elastic AI Assistant to the world of GitHub Copilot using extensions. I'm a principal customer enterprise architect and Gen AI specialist here at Elastic. So thank you for joining. Let's hop into it. So real quick intro to Elastic for those who might not be familiar. We are a search company. We are been around for over 12 years and have been kind of the de facto search engine and the leader in search for many years. Elasticsearch is our core engine. And on top of that, you can build your own custom search application, but you can also use our solution UIs for things like observability, that's logs, metrics, APM, OpenTelemetry, things like that. So basically how your application, your cloud environment, your infrastructure, how all that is working together. And then you can use our security tools to secure your network, all your endpoints, and use our SIEM and advanced AI capabilities within there to detect any intrusions or any other bad actors or just generally bad things that are going on in your environment. We have a rich visualization layer, so you can build custom dashboards or use our out-of-the-box dashboards to get a visual understanding of what's going on in your environment or with the data that you bring into Elasticsearch. And of course, being a search engine company, you can build the most robust and rich search applications today on your own custom data. So today, though, we're going to focus in on observability. So that's this pink box here in the middle. And we're using a microservices environment that has a little microservice application. It's not too important on what it really does. But I used to work in operations for years in financial trading firms, and then I moved into the engineering side. But I spent a lot of time staring at screens, collecting logs and APM data and metrics in general. So if I click in here to observability, this is kind of a standard view that you have when you're collecting data. Now, as I mentioned, this is a small sample or demo application for today. So we're just going to look at logs and APM data. But if we're collecting metrics, we can have that. You can have synthetic data to do synthetic testing, collect user experience. And really, you can collect all kinds of things, even down to universal profiling of your environment. But when I was working in operations for years, I had, like most people, standard alerts set up all over the place. So I can click into these alerts. And what we're seeing here is an error threshold count. So there's too many log errors for a certain bucket. I can click into the app. And what this does now is the alert was about APM data. Specifically, it was related to this Node Server Elastic Manual APM service. Again, it's not super important on what it does, but it's an application in my microservice environment. And it was throwing a bunch of errors, apparently. That's what the static alert did. So again, traditionally, I would go in and, back years ago, I didn't have as many nice UIs, but still, I kind of went in, would do error counts. And what helps me out here today in Elastic and Kibana, I actually collected the error. So I'm seeing that there's a type error, and we actually have the error message and culprit. This is a pretty simple one, but we can still click into this to get more information. So you can see here now I'm in the, if we look at the breadcrumb trail, I'm at APM service, this node service, error. So I'm able to kind of dig in, but I'm still having to click through and manually collect more information. But once I get down here, I can see that the post API favorites endpoint was the most affected transaction. It's the only affected transaction. You can see it is happening pretty often, relatively through the day, pretty consistently. And again, we collected the actual exception message that came through and the culprit. In this case, the culprit's just the file where it's happening. So index.js. And down below, here's the actual stack trace where we're extracting that information from. So this is great. Now, being a simple kind of problem here, we could go and I'd have to go open a ServiceNow ticket or Jira ticket, or in my really early days, I'd just walk down the hall and go hound one of the developers and tell them to fix their code. But let's say this is something that's more complex and that I didn't really understand. This is where Elastic brings our AI assistant and AI capabilities really to help operators, be that SRE operators or just traditional operations people, to help understand what's going on. So we have this little icon here, and it says, it's trying to tell us what's the error, and it's a little ANI. So if I click on the little arrow there to drop down, this is where we're starting to help you out automatically. So what's happening here is Elasticsearch, first being a search engine, we are collecting all the relevant information about this error. Now, in this case, it'll be log information, potentially APM trace information if that's related. But whatever error we're looking at, it's going to use the search capabilities to find that data. And then once it has that data, it's going to send it to an LLM. In this case, we're connected to Azure's OpenAI. We're using the new GPT-4o model. And what we're saying, behind the scenes is, the user is seeing this error. This is the data that's relevant to it. Please help explain, what's going on, what the analysis is, and how it can resolve it. This is the RAG architecture that most people are familiar with these days, the, retrieval augmented generation. Being a search engine, we're really good at retrieving the relevant data, and that's what we're doing here. But now we're doing it automatically built into the stack. So if we kind of scroll down here, we can see this generated data. So we say, again, it's a type error. We saw this before. It talks about the stack trace. But this is where the LLM really starts to help us out if we're not familiar with, the actual code or what a particular error message means. It's saying, here there's a typo in the method name. So res.json, you can see there's an extra N on there. Is not a valid function. The correct method should be res.json with one N. So it's likely a typo. That's great. It's telling us that it's a typo, which is pretty common. I know one of the most common issues, right, when you're finding bugs is someone typoed something. It gives me the location in the code. So it's at line 138 in index.js. Here's the relevant code snippet. This is great. So I can open a ticket now. I could do that automatically, or I could do it manually, whatever my setup is. And I can say, hey, not only here's the full analysis, but here's the solution. In this case, it's super simple. We're just going to change the typo and remove that extra N. But if it's something more complicated, again, we can provide the provided solution, and then it'll be up to, in this case, the developer to, see what the next steps are. If they agree with it, or maybe they have another way they want to fix it, that's great. But this is a helpful way to get from what's going on to how do we fix it very quickly and just get it. Even tells us the potential causes, right? Human error, that's most likely what happens. We should probably have some more robust code review and things like that. And, we're seeing a nicely formatted bit of data here. But if I click on this metadata, this is just an example of one document that shows all the data that we've collected. So you think about one document with all this information times, many more documents, whatever becomes relevant in our search that we provide to the LLM. This gives the LLM a lot more information, and this is what we call grounding an LLM. We don't ask it just general questions, what's this error? We give it all the information and say, the information is inside this data. This is your answer. Use this data, and only this data essentially, to find your answer and provide a solution so that it's not just making up an answer and hallucinating one. It can use the actual data. So I'm going to go back to the main screen, the main overview screen. And that was great. I got to a resolution pretty quickly. But, operations, you have lots of alerts. You're busy. You're doing everything. I don't want to be clicking into alerts. It's a little bit of a hassle. So what I can do from this top screen is I can click on, again, we have the AI button. Here it's gray, but same A and I. I click on this. And so this is also the observability assistant. It's the standard chat window. Lots of common chat applications have it. We're kind of familiar with it. And we have our input box at the bottom. And a lot of times if this is your first time using Kibana or something, maybe you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing here. We give a couple of examples. And just to get you started, you can click on one of those. But in this case, I'm going to reset and I'm going to say, I just came in, I opened up Kibana, and I'm going to say, are there any alerts from the last day? Oops. So are there any alerts from the last day? So again, we're doing a very similar thing here that we did before, except I'm just asking a question and it's kicking off. You can see these 4 events here. What these are is our AI assistant provides tools or functions that the LLM, Azure OpenAI in this case, can use. So it can do things like the LLM can ask our assistant, hey, the user is asking about alerts. Can you find all the alerts for me and then send back the data? So there's that back and forth communication. And this, again, helps the LLM be grounded and provides the LLM additional tools to do things. We have things like context, screen context. So if you just say, what's this? And you're looking at something relevant, like an error, the AI assistant will provide a function that says, here's the screen context. The user is looking at this error during this time range and provide it back. And again, then the LLM can move back and forth. But in this case, we're talking about alerts. So I'm going to say, I said, are there any alerts for the last day? And it went through. So there's one active alert, get some information. We can expand this out. But it's the same alert we saw before. It's the, Node.js error, it's the JavaScript. And this, though, is information about the alert itself. I want to find out about, now that I know that there's an alert, I want to find out about the issue that's causing it. So I'm going to just be a little lazy here. I'm going to paste in for node service, Elastic Manual Service. Can you tell me the last exception message and what the culprit is? So if I run that, again, it's going to do the very similar thing. So now we know, we know the time range because when it started, we know information about which service it is. We know how long it was running for. And we're going to do, in this case, you can see there's 6 events. So we had a little bit of, chatter back and forth to get more information. The first thing you'll see here is it's saying define the last exception message. You can read that. It's trying to be a little helpful. So somewhat recently, we introduced what we call ESQL, ES-Pipe-QL. It's a piped query language for Elastic. And it's a newer language. And like most newer languages, you have to learn them. It's very easy to use. Anyone who's used any kind of pipe language or, on Linux command line, you're piping commands together. Very similar idea. And it's trying to be a little helpful here. It's saying, great, here's how in the future, if you want to find it, it's kind of training us a little bit. So it says from logs dash APM star, pipe, where the processor event is error, and the service name is this node service. And then we're piping it. So we're going to sort it by the timestamp descending, and then piping, we just want the the last one. But it's great that it told me I don't actually want to run it. I want the assistant to run it for me, which it does. And again, this is the same information we saw before because it's the same error. Res.json is not a function. To type error, here's the transaction name. So this is all the information. It appears there's a typo in the code. And great. So the last thing I want to ask, I'm going to paste this into, is how many times did this particular error, res.json is not a function, exception happen in the last hour? Now, it happened enough to trigger an alert, but that alert was looking for any exception from this service. Now, I want to know this particular exception, how often it happened in the last hour. Is it just one of many alerts, or is it happening a lot? And again, we're going to get the ESQL information, just add a little bit. But what we can really see down here is it happened 868 times in the last hour. That seems like a lot to me. So again, what we can do is, open that ticket. We could ask it to open a ticket if we have the integration set up. But right now we know the information to do it. Now, this is great from an SRE or operations perspective. I would have, loved to have this type of thing back in the day. But what if you're a developer and you're sitting in VS Code? So you may have heard recently that GitHub announced and Microsoft announced the GitHub Copilot private beta program, where companies can start creating custom copilots. So we're part of the private beta. What I'm about to show you is not in production right now. It's not something you can get on the marketplace. This is a small POC I helped develop. just to prove that it works out. And then our engineering team is looking at implementing it. So this is kind of a future-looking thing. What I will say is everything you're about to see here was built with the AI Assistant's public API. So if you have Elasticsearch running 8.13 or later, then you can use the API to build your own integration. But let's take a look here. Again, in the interest of time, I'm going to just run through this. So in VS Code, I now have a Copilot Elastic Copilot app, and this is running some code. And essentially, what it's doing is integrating all that API, that AI assistant functionality into VS Code using the API. So this application connects to my GitHub account and then makes an API call to my Elasticsearch cluster. So I'm asking the same thing I asked before, right? Are there any alerts on the last day? We get the same information because I'm in VS Code. And this would be great if, I'm, putting on my developer hat and I'm sitting in development, developing an application and I'm pushing out code to development. Now it'd be great if I was also using Elasticsearch to collect data and, all the data and logs and metrics and everything in my dev environment so that I could catch bugs, simple bugs like this, before they actually made it to production. So I see there's errors. I'm going to then ask it, again, just like before, for that service, can you tell me the last error, that culprit? So in this case, we're asking for the culprit and the message. And then I'm going to ask, what does the message mean? Let's pretend I didn't know what that type of message mean as the developer. But what I can do here is, again, all from within VS Code, using all that functionality that the AI assistant has provided, get the very same information. And then what I can do is I can go ahead, because I'm in VS Code and I have this code base loaded up in my IDE, it says, right, I know it's in index.js. I know that it's not a function. So let's go open up and fix it. So I'm going to open up index.js. I'm going to go copy that and I'm going to search for it. So res.json with an extra N. Obviously, it's just one extra N, but let's pretend I really want to be sure this time. I'm going to copy the selection and paste it in and then save and go. Now, this was a solution from a large language model. Fan of the trust but verify model. This is why it's great to have this integration in development, in your development environment, because as a developer, I could then, I fix my code, I can push it out to development, and hopefully I have, QA and tests that can go and verify that now it's working correctly. I could go and ask VS Code, are there any errors in the last 2 minutes for this service once I know that the new deployment's gone out? So I hope this gave you something to think about. Both everything you saw in Kibana is in production today. We just released 8.14 recently, as from when I am recording this. We're always adding new features. This VS Code, as I mentioned, is not in production. It's something we're looking at as part of the private beta program. But what I will say is, if you're interested in things like this, please check out our Search Labs and Observability Labs. So Search Labs has all our technical focused blogs, and there's a GitHub repo associated with it where you can download code and actually, wire it up to your Elastic and get a POC running in really a few minutes for chatbots and everything. So everything from semantic search to integrating full RAG applications with an LLM. And then our Observability Labs is focused on, as you may guess, observability. So things like that. You'll see the little box there with the running person. That's a blog I wrote called the Elastic AI Assistant for Observability Escapes Kibana. The API that I talk about in that blog is the exact same one I used to build this POC for GitHub. So you can take the API, if you have Elasticsearch running with the Observability AI Assistant for Observability running, you can use that and build it into your own application and take all that functionality from the AI Assistant and bring it into your own. And the last thing I'll leave you with is one more QR code. It's our listing in Microsoft's Marketplace, so you can deploy us in Azure. You can deploy Elasticsearch and get up and running. You can also integrate and bring in all that data from your Azure services and integrate it with them and monitor everything that's going on. So thank you for your time. Please use the QR codes and come to elastic.co and check us out. Thank you.
Excellent. Hemant, good to see you. Thank you. And thank you to Jeff for the excellent presentation there and the entire team at Elastic. As we dive into this, first off, was there anything that you wanted to add to the presentation? Anything that you wanted to touch on from Jeff's examples?
Yeah. So I think obviously you folks saw like what we are working on, and it's still a work in progress. But that's what we are excited about next is how we take it to the marketplace, and then how you all can start, working with it and provide us all the feedback that we need to make it better and make it where it needs to be for your day-to-day fun with it.
Fantastic. So a lot of developers are very interested in the Elastic Suite. It's a very popular suite. It's been around for a number of years. We all rely on these types of products. Now, in the Elastic Suite, specifically in Kibana's reporting, there's a lot of security analysis or observability analysis. Is there any reporting available through this chat integration in Copilot?
Yeah. So where it is right now, so we are starting with Elastic AI Assistant, as Jeff talks about in his presentation. Like there is an API that we are leveraging through the GitHub Copilot extension in our POC. And we would want to take it to a point where you can interact with it without having to go in Kibana, which is where it lives today. If you are an Elastic user, you will need to be in Kibana to access all that AI Assistant is doing. Once we move it over into the GitHub Copilot extension, so you don't have to leave your favorite IDE where you develop or GitHub Copilot chat and interact with it. The AI assistant itself does provide some capabilities around, you can ask it not just a query or not just the data, but you can also ask like, I'm looking for visualizing this specific type of data. Hey, AI assistant, help me out with it. So eventually, as we take this into the marketplace, that will certainly be a capability that we will look forward to, that you can also take a look at how a specific set of data that's in Elastic can also be visualized and not just access the data.
No, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. When talking about interacting with your Kibana instances, there's a number of interactions that come to mind. If have my Kibana instance, I'm looking at my reports, immediately I want to query some data in Kibana. It's usually the first place I'm going to stop. Are you able to execute Kibana queries from the chat integration?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you can execute the queries, or actually you're actually just asking it the questions. It does take care of converting that into a query that what it needs to look like, and return you back with the data that you are interested in.
Oh, fantastic. So if I don't have all the correct, let's say SQL syntax in my head ready to go, I can ask in plain language, you're going to convert that to the proper query and then invoke the query through the agent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the assistant that you need, so that you don't have to know all that, right? The different query languages and different nuances of those.
Fantastic. I think you made a lot of product managers very happy with that response. With Kibana, there's a lot of automated alerts, such as like an error alert that's coming through. Are you able to, Jeff was able to walk through the dashboard on a little bit of that. Are you able to update or manage those alerts from the chat interface?
So we are starting with, at this point, just querying like what exists. So there's less of actions right now in the extension, or at least the proof of concept that we did. But as AI Assistant evolves into more of also an agent and take an action, so will the extension along with it, because this is essentially just a wrapper that's we're going to have on the AI Assistant.
Makes sense. That makes sense. If I'm developing, not just consuming Elastic suite of products, but maybe I'm developing to integrate Elastic into a product I'm developing, does the Elastic AI Assistant in Copilot Chat utilize, or can it generate code that utilizes the Elastic SDKs?
So it's going to be two parts to it, right? So one is GitHub Copilot Chat on itself, like given all the data that it has learned on, it's really good if you just ask a question within the GitHub Copilot Chat, like how to develop for Elasticsearch, or if I'm doing something in Python, give me a sample code. GitHub Copilot is pretty good at that. At the same time, we are constantly releasing things. We are constantly evolving our query languages. So you might end up finding things that are not necessarily most up to date in some of the public LLMs that exist out there. And ESPipe QL queries is such an example, right? So we just came out with it a couple of months ago, and the chances are, if you look up for ESPipe QL query, most likely GitHub Copilot Chat or any public LLM would send you back the ESQL query. and you see the nuance there, right? Like what ES-PipeQL is, it's essentially our take on, like, if you're coming from a world where you're used to using pipes in your queries, you want to get multiple queries combined into a single query. That's what this query language is going to help you accomplish. And that's something that our AI assistant, because we own it and we train it, as soon as the documentation comes out, it can help you out with that. So there will always be a combination of a lot of things GitHub Copilot Chat would be able to help you out of the gate. But then there are specific nuances related to Elasticsearch, which might be a lot more recent than the last time public crawl of the LLM happened. And those are the areas where we would love to add value as users use GitHub Copilot Chat, but then also able to talk to this AI assistant and get whatever is the latest that they need to know.
That makes a whole lot of sense. It's definitely, a great partnership in filling those gaps for the developer, being able to get the most up-to-date and authoritative information there. Follow-up question with that is, or a tangential question, I should say, does this work, or do you envision this working with the entire Elastic suite? We're talking a lot about Kibana today, but Elastic has other areas that are for opportunity. Where do you see this going in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the AI assistant already is capable of working with the data in Elasticsearch, and it takes a very opinionated view on who the persona of this user is who's interacting with this data. So that's why there are certain aspects of it that feels a lot more like it only works with the observability data or the data that's coming from your infrastructure. But at the end of the day, it's just something that interacts with the data in Elasticsearch. So we have the same capability exposed to our security users, and the same capability is also exposed if you're just interested in understanding some data that exists in Elasticsearch. So two such examples that come, and I saw that Atlassian folks were also on this webinar earlier. And so the AI assistant has this concept of knowledge bases, whether it's your knowledge that exists in the GitHub, whether it's the knowledge that exists in your wikis, irrespective of where that knowledge exists, it could be something that's specific to your enterprise, and you can feed all that information into the AI assistant, which essentially what it does is it's going to crawl that data, index it into Elasticsearch, and make it available to interact with the users when they get to it. So short answer, yes, absolutely. The data in Elasticsearch is at your disposal when you have AI assistant exposed to you and available to you to work with in the GitHub Copilot Chat.
Fantastic. No, that's thank you for the business use case there, because there's a lot of interesting scenarios you just described. You also mentioned we're talking about essentially reading existing data from the Elastic suite of products, potentially in the future managing or invoking actions against this data. How do you see the future of these AI assistants from your perspective? What is the AI assistant vision for Elastic?
So the way as you touched upon this earlier, right? Like, can you take actions on it? And eventually we definitely see them that they're starting as assistants, but as the users evolve, as the use cases evolve, as the LLMs evolve, these will definitely become sort of agents that will help you also execute on the things, not just get or give you an understanding, but also go along with you based on whatever the action that needs to happen once you saw that outage in a specific scenario, or you're trying to go after root cause analysis of a specific production issues. The AI assistant should be able to help you in the future go beyond just being able to know about it, but also what's the right action? What should we do next? An example of where this is evolving is more from our security space, but attack discovery is something that we introduced a couple of months ago. And it essentially infuses the LLMs and AI right from the beginning, right? It doesn't necessarily wait for a user to ask it a question. It just applies it based on all the security incidents that it sees, and it helps users make sense of it by the time they arrive to Elastic Security as a solution. So we expect the same to happen on the observability space, and continuously AI assistants will evolve into more than just folks that I guess we are at a point where I'm starting to call them as folks, where they're just answering your questions. They will actually be with you and execute on the action that needs to be taken.
No, that makes sense. Thank you for that incredibly descriptive answer there. It looks like we have time for one last question here, which is maybe one of the most interesting questions for our viewers. I'm interested in this. How do I follow along? How do I sign up, or how can I be part of any betas?
Absolutely. So I will share a link and email address in the chat that you can leverage to contact us if you have any questions or if you have specific feedback. or things that you didn't see in the demo, but and you were like, oh, why is it not there? Like we will be able to answer all those questions and keep you posted on how we go from where we are from a POC to listing it on the marketplace and make it available for you.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Hemant, for joining us today. Thank you to Jeff and the entire team at Elastic for sharing this and developing this in partnership with GitHub. If you're watching this later on, as opposed to the live broadcast, be sure to check the links in our description to follow along and get join part in any of the open betas that we have. And we're excited to see where we can build from here. Thank you, Hemant.
Thank you. Thanks, Alexis.
Hi, this is Pato Echawe. I'm the co-founder and CTO here at Split. We are super excited to show you our latest addition to Switch, in this case, the GitHub Copilot extension. What this extension brings you is the ability to interact with your Split setup without leaving the comfort of your IDE. So imagine you're an engineer and you run into this simple code. As you can see here, we are using a feature flag called new guided tool. And you wonder if this flag is being used in production or not. But to level set, let me show you what Split looks like right now in the Split console. So we have a workspace called My App. That's not a default, that's a custom name. So you'll see how we interact with it within the IDE. We have two feature flags, new guided tool and recommendation model. And new guided tool, which is the example flag that we want to use for this exercise, for this demo, is defined in two environments, production and stage. In production, it hasn't received traffic yet. That's being shown by the double red arrow. But in staging, it has been receiving traffic. Again, that's been signaled by the double green arrow. So let's go back to the IDE and start interacting with Copilot via Switch. Let's ask it about whether or not it's receiving traffic in production. We'll leave a few seconds to gather the answer. What Switch is doing, what Copilot is doing, is asking Switch, our agent, to gather the necessary information to create an answer. Switch will read the API behind the scene and provide a JSON payload. But in this case, so the answer is that it's now receiving traffic in either environment. Now, we want to give Copilot more specific information and tell it that we really care about this flag in the workspace called My App. For context, workspace is a logical way to group feature flags within Split. You can imagine a workspace being mapped one-to-one to potentially a product line. So effectively, Copilot returns the information saying that within the workspace My App, this flag is not receiving traffic in production. Now let's dig a little deeper and let's figure out what's going on with stage. The example I'm trying to give here, and so stage is lowercase here. It might work, might not. We notice that it's case sensitive. So here it says that indeed it's receiving traffic, which if you remember, let's go back to the browser and show the double green arrow for stage, which is indicating that it has been receiving traffic. What it means is this flag has been actively evaluated in the stage, and therefore it's receiving traffic. So this is a typical scenario where a developer started working on a feature in the pre-production environment and perhaps is testing it there, or other teammates are testing it, but it hasn't reached production in a way that the end user will interact with it. So another question you may have is, who is the owner of this flag? Perhaps we have questions about the line of code or the code path that's being executed. So let's ask Copilot about that. This is another skill that we've provided this agent to be able to look up who the owner of the feature flag is. So we can reach out and ask questions if we need to. So in this case, it's me. I was the one that created the feature flag in the stage environment, which is accurate. Split also has the notion of status. So let's go ahead and hit enter here. So status, they come predefined. It could be in the pre-production stage or in the rollout stage, but we can also define our own. Sometimes it's very useful to understand what that feature flag is intended for, and even obviously the status of it. So let's try again. So sometimes it's not, the answer is non-deterministic, but so in this case the status of a flag is it's been active, it's been used, and is on effectively in a stage. But this is not it. We have more capabilities. So for example, we can ask Copilot about the definition of a flag. In Split, the definition of a flag is encompasses what treatments are defined, and obviously the status, whether or not it's killed or not, the owner, and when it's receiving traffic, etc. Obviously, this is still a work in progress. Sometimes there are glitches, but here, as you can see, the payload of the whole definition of a given flag. This is a typical flag that has only two treatments, on and off, and in the stage environment, we already saw in the prior interaction that it is receiving traffic. So that's what we see here in the third bullet point, that the flag received traffic recently and effectively is now killed. Traffic type appeals to a particular way that Split sees feature flags. We call them traffic types, and it has to do with who we are targeting to. The default is usually a user for B2C companies or an account for B2B companies. This happened to be an example where this flag is being targeted to a company. That's why the type account. We can also ask for the list of all feature flags in a given environment. So let's try that. So hopefully the answer will be 2, as we saw recently in the web console. While we wait for the answer, we can switch really quick to the Split web console to double check that we have two flags, new guided tool and recommendation model. And let's look at the answer from Copilot really quick. So effectively, we have 2 feature flags, 2 splits, new guided tool and recommendation model. Both of them seem to have the accurate information of how it's been defined in the stage environment for my app workspace. So as you can see here, most of the API calls that Copilot and Switch do behind the scene are read-only. So we are informing you of a particular state of flags or owners or environments, etc. We will evolve this skill to be able to perform write operations. So you may be able to kill a flag, or when you're ready to push to production via the Copilot chat, you may want to ask to, for example, toggle a particular flag in the production environment to yourself as you wait for a pipeline to deploy the piece of code with your flag in the production environment. So I hope you like it and that you find it useful. And we'll show you more progress as we evolve these capabilities. Thank you.
Awesome. With me now, we have Pato Echawe and Alejo Vasquez. Thank you for the presentation from the Split team and all the other team members that contributed to this project. As we get into this, we're talking about managing feature flags and managing how you deploy a more modern application with natural language. Was there anything you wanted to add before we get into some questions we have prepared? Was there anything you wanted to add from the presentation now that we've gone through it?
Oh, not much. One, excited to have this opportunity, and particularly because as a developer, that I'm excited to have, bring support to users in the place where they are in, usually IDE. So this came really, I think, handy, and we jumped right in when you guys proposed to help out here.
Fantastic. Now, us as well, we're always excited to see what partners can develop as we move forward together. Getting specifically into this agent's capabilities, one question that we had coming in was, with this natural language integration, am I able to see all my split workspaces through the chat interface?
That's a good question. And obviously, we started with the most obvious, let's call them skills. And workspaces is the particular one, because sometimes what we recognize by a workspace is usually a product line within a company, for example. And sometimes you have restrictions even within teammates on who can affect what particular product line. So far, we made that determination that you bound the Copilot skill to a particular workspace to not cross, access control to another product line. Just to, in a way, to mimic how we issue permissioning within the split product. Everything is up for question. If we notice that that's not the right flow, we can always add stuff or remove stuff. So far, that has been the call out. Always, again, curious how it resonates with the customers and users.
No, thank you. Thank you for the distinction there. Obviously, separation of data, separation of concerns within integrating products is going to be a hot topic as more and more users join these programs. On that note, let's say I'm within a particular workspace, through natural language, am I able to see all the feature flags that are currently used in a particular environment?
Ale, do you want to take that one?
Yes, that you can definitely list all your feature flags for your workspace and specific environments. So yeah, that's totally possible. And you can see also like a lot of details or whatever you want, depending on what you want to get from the Copilot chat. You can definitely get that.
Fantastic. Now, I'm a new developer. I'm implementing your system. Is this agent also able to assist me with using your SDK? Can it generate code to implement the functions needed to use your system?
Yes, it should be able to. We've used, so behind the scenes, even though we use a large language model, we also provide internally some more access to the latest documentation, even latest API, to augment the answers much better than using just vanilla LLMs. So we've actually even to create some demos or pieces and bits of the presentation that you saw before, we actually used it to produce a simple code so you can use it to run the demo.
Fantastic. With I've implemented some feature flags. I have this running in my system. Am I able to manage? Can I switch a feature flag on or off through natural language, for a particular environment?
That is, if you let me give you a little bit of what's coming in the next few months or quarters. So we started with these skills that I call it read only. For a number of reasons, we wanted to first make sure there's no side effects until we are absolutely sure that things work perfectly and everybody's getting the benefit from using the agent. The intent is, as we gain confident that this works as expected, is to move into write operations, like changing the flag definition, in which a particular case of that is killing a flag. But it can also be to create a flag in a particular environment. Just imagine you're a developer, you come across a line of code that you think, I want a flag here. So you should be able to ask the agent in the future to create the flag and then, for example, deploy the flag in the stage. And as you progress, you can even request to move it to production. Currently, it's not implemented. It's our desire, it's Alejos and my desire to implement write operations. I call it actions because it has a side effect. But that's the hope. So we'll be excited to add that at the right moment.
Fantastic. Thank you for the in-depth explanation. You may have answered my next two questions as well. In your demo, you had a great example about pulling down your current configuration for a specific environment, which is really, it's great for developers to be able to see what the rules are in a current environment, why something is currently functioning the way it is. One of my questions following up was, well, then can I manage that configuration? I can see it. Can I maybe switch certain properties? And it sounds like that's something your team is looking into developing in the future here, is being able to manage all of this read-only data at the moment from your system.
Totally. And if you remember what I said earlier, that I'm excited about giving you and everybody, our users, the ability to do more in the comfort of the IDE per se. It's of course the right thing to do to allow you to make configuration changes on the spot without, as much as I want you to come to our console and do stuff, but I also recognize the value of doing in the environment you're in. So that's why we're excited about, we will be excited about adding that functionality at some point soon.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. One interesting piece of data that you had in your demo was the ability to see if a current flag in a current environment, a specific flag in a current environment, is receiving traffic. So maybe it's enabled, but it's not receiving traffic, or it is receiving traffic. Are you able to pull down that data through the natural language interface?
The question is if I'm able to pull down the information about the traffic, you said?
Yes, if you can see, is this flag receiving traffic, as an example?
It's a great question for Ali. He's been working on that recently.
Yes, you can do that. And actually, you can retrieve like a lot of information about the field flag. And in this information, you can get that data specifically. And we can also play like with the format. Like, let's say you want to see, I don't know, a specific day, minute, seconds, whatever. So that's totally possible, and it's happening right now.
So, and if you can add a few more sentences to that, we like doing that because, again, put yourself in a developer seat. You're developing, you come across a flag that already exists, and I wonder many times, is this flag receiving traffic? Because what I really care with that, when I ask myself that question, is should that flag be removed, or is in the right place because it's being used? What I usually do is I have to go to split console, see if it's receiving traffic, do multiple clicks, and if it's not, then I go back and delete. And then same thing, can I do that quicker by just staying in the IDE and ask the Copilot the same question? And hopefully get the answer before I have to do all of that round trip between different applications. What I'm describing is like that reduction, which is a thing in feature flags. You don't want too many, you don't want too few, and we believe adding these capabilities would just help with code cleanliness and make it more readable.
Totally makes sense. Definitely, I think a shared goal with a lot of the partners and GitHub ourselves, and how we're trying to enhance the developer experience. It looks like we have time for one last question here, which is, again, I've been saying it through the webinar, one of our most exciting questions. I'm interested in this. I love the demo. How do I get in touch? How do I join a beta? How do I hop on a wait list? What are my next steps?
It's a good question. Well, one, they can always reach out to our dear partners in GitHub for that, but also our line of communication so far is support@split.io. As you even described on other sessions, this is early, so we will be able to bring users in and we will handhold those installations as we're developing more like security controls and stuff that are very important at the end of the day for self-serve. But reach out to us at support@split.io, and we work with you on your timeline and expectation as we continue to march slowly but surely towards a GA time frame.
Fantastic. Pato, Alejo, thank you so much again for joining us today. Thank you for the developing this integration with us, and we're looking forward to what we can build together next. Appreciate you, folks.
Thank you, Alex and team. This was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of today's presenters and to all of you for joining today. We were able to view how Atlassian can provide project and team-specific knowledge from their products such as Jira and Confluence. Elastic is bringing their AI tooling into the IDE, and Split allows for you to manage your feature flags and environments without ever having to leave your development environment. If you're interested in joining the Copilot Partner Program, be sure to visit our link in the description or in the chat. Thank you, and let's build together.